I'm a king. Am I a king? I'm not a king. He's a king. Is he a king? He isn't a king. She's a queen. Is she a queen? She isn't a queen. You're a king. Are you a king? You aren't a king. We're kings. Are we kings? We aren't kings. They're kings. Are they kings? They aren't kings. I'm a prince. Am I a prince? I'm not a prince. He's a prince. Is he a prince? He isn't a prince. She's a princess. Is she a princess? She isn't a princess. You're a prince. Are you a prince? You aren't a prince. We're princes. Are we princes? We aren't princes. They're princes. Are they princes? They aren't princes. I'm a teacher. Am I a teacher? I'm not a teacher. He's a teacher. Is he a teacher? He isn't a teacher. She's a teacher. Is she a teacher? She isn't a teacher. You're a teacher. Are you a teacher? You aren't a teacher. We're teachers. Are we teachers? We aren't teachers. They're teachers. Are they teachers? They aren't teachers. I'm a worker. Am I a worker? I'm not a worker. He's a worker. Is he a worker? He isn't a worker. She's a worker. Is she a worker? She isn't a worker. You're a worker. Are you a worker? You aren't a worker. We're workers. Are we workers? We aren't workers. They're workers. Are they workers? They aren't workers. I'm an actor. Am I an actor? I'm not an actor. He's an actor. Is he an actor? He isn't an actor. She's an actress. Is she an actress? She isn't an actress. You're an actor. Are you an actor? You aren't an actor. We're actors. Are we actors? We aren't actors. They're actors. Are they actors? They aren't actors. I'm a police officer. Am I a police officer? I'm not a police officer. He's a police officer. Is he a police officer? He isn't a police officer. She's a police officer. Is she a police officer? She isn't a police officer. You're a police officer. Are you a police officer? You aren't a police officer. We're police officers. Are we police officers? We aren't police officers. They're police officers. Are they police officers? They aren't police officers. I'm an accountant. Am I an accountant? I'm not an accountant. He's an accountant. Is he an accountant? He isn't an accountant. She's an accountant. Is she an accountant? She isn't an accountant. You're an accountant. Are you an accountant? You aren't an accountant. We're accountants. Are we accountants? We aren't accountants. They're accountants. Are they accountants? They aren't accountants. I'm a waiter. Am I a waiter? I'm not a waiter. He's a waiter. Is he a waiter? He isn't a waiter. She's a waitress. Is she a waitress? She isn't a waitress. You're a waiter. Are you a waiter? You aren't a waiter. We're waiters. Are we waiters? We aren't waiters. They're waiters. Are they waiters? They aren't waiters. I'm a butcher. Am I a butcher? I'm not a butcher. He's a butcher. Is he a butcher? He isn't a butcher. She's a butcher. Is she a butcher? She isn't a butcher. You're a butcher. Are you a butcher? You aren't a butcher. We're butchers. Are we butchers? We aren't butchers. They're butchers. Are they butchers? They aren't butchers. I'm a plumber. Am I a plumber? I'm not a plumber. He's a plumber. Is he a plumber? He isn't a plumber. She's a plumber. Is she a plumber? She isn't a plumber. You're a plumber. Are you a plumber? You aren't a plumber. We're plumbers. Are we plumbers? We aren't plumbers. They're plumbers. Are they plumbers? They aren't plumbers. I'm a cashier. Am I a cashier? I'm not a cashier. He's a cashier. Is he a cashier? He isn't a cashier. She's a cashier. Is she a cashier? She isn't a cashier. You're a cashier. Are you a cashier? You aren't a cashier. We're cashiers. Are we cashiers? We aren't cashiers. They're cashiers. Are they cashiers? They aren't cashiers. I'm a receptionist. Am I a receptionist? I'm not a receptionist. He's a receptionist. Is he a receptionist? He isn't a receptionist. She's a receptionist. Is she a receptionist? She isn't a receptionist. You're a receptionist. Are you a receptionist? You aren't a receptionist. We're receptionists. Are we receptionists? We aren't receptionists. They're receptionists. Are they receptionists? They aren't receptionists. I'm an employee. Am I an employee? I'm not an employee. He's an employee. Is he an employee? He isn't an employee. She's an employee. Is she an employee? She isn't an employee. You're an employee. Are you an employee? You aren't an employee. We're employees. Are we employees? We aren't employees. They're employees. Are they employees? They aren't employees. I'm a cleaner. Am I a cleaner? I'm not a cleaner. He's a cleaner. Is he a cleaner? He isn't a cleaner. She's a cleaner. Is she a cleaner? She isn't a cleaner. You're a cleaner. Are you a cleaner? You aren't a cleaner. We're cleaners. Are we cleaners? We aren't cleaners. They're cleaners. Are they cleaners? They aren't cleaners. I'm a carpenter. Am I a carpenter? I'm not a carpenter. He's a carpenter. Is he a carpenter? He isn't a carpenter. She's a carpenter. Is she a carpenter? She isn't a carpenter. You're a carpenter. Are you a carpenter? You aren't a carpenter. We're carpenters. Are we carpenters? We aren't carpenters. They're carpenters. Are they carpenters? They aren't carpenters. I'm a hairdresser. Am I a hairdresser? I'm not a hairdresser. He's a barber. Is he a barber? He isn't a barber. She's a hairdresser. Is she a hairdresser? She isn't a hairdresser. You're a hairdresser. Are you a hairdresser? You aren't a hairdresser. We're hairdressers. Are we hairdressers? We aren't hairdressers. They're hairdressers. Are they hairdressers? They aren't hairdressers. I'm a musician. I am a musician. I'm not a musician. He's a musician. Is he a musician? He isn't a musician. She's a musician. Is she a musician? She isn't a musician. You're a musician. Are you a musician? You aren't a musician. We're musicians. Are we musicians? We aren't musicians. They're musicians. Are they musicians? They aren't musicians. I'm a cook. Am I a cook? I'm not a cook. He's a cook. Is he a cook? He isn't a cook. She's a cook. Is she a cook? She isn't a cook. You're a cook. Are you a cook? You aren't a cook. We're cooks. Are we cooks? We aren't cooks. They're cooks. Are they cooks? They aren't cooks. I'm a chef. Am I a chef? I'm not a chef. He's a chef. Is he a chef? He isn't a chef. She's a chef. Is she a chef? She isn't a chef. You're a chef. Are you a chef? You aren't a chef. We're chefs. Are we chefs? We aren't chefs. They're chefs. Are they chefs? They aren't chefs. I'm a singer. Am I a singer? I'm not a singer. He's a singer. Is he a singer? He isn't a singer. She's a singer. Is she a singer? She isn't a singer. You're a singer. Are you a singer? You aren't a singer. We're singers. Are we singers? We aren't singers. They're singers. Are they singers? They aren't singers. I'm a client. Am I a client? I'm not a client. He's a client. Is he a client? He isn't a client. She's a client. Is she a client? She isn't a client. You're a client. Are you a client? You aren't a client. We're clients. Are we clients? We aren't clients. They're clients. Are they clients? They aren't clients. I'm a doctor. Am I a doctor? I'm not a doctor. He's a doctor. Is he a doctor? He isn't a doctor. She's a doctor. Is she a doctor? She isn't a doctor. You're a doctor. Are you a doctor? You aren't a doctor. We're doctors. Are we doctors? We aren't doctors. They're doctors. Are they doctors? They aren't doctors. I'm a father. Am I a father? I'm not a father. He's a father. Is he a father? He isn't a father. She's a mother. Is she a mother? She isn't a mother. You're a father. Are you a father? You aren't a father. We're fathers. Are we fathers? We aren't fathers. They're fathers. Are they fathers? They aren't fathers. I'm an alien. Am I an alien? I'm not an alien. He's an alien. Is he an alien? He isn't an alien. She's an alien. Is she an alien? She isn't an alien. You're an alien. Are you an alien? You aren't an alien. We're aliens. Are we aliens? We aren't aliens. They're aliens. Are they aliens? They aren't aliens. I'm a boy. Am I a boy? I'm not a boy. He's a boy. Is he a boy? He isn't a boy. She's a girl. Is she a girl? She isn't a girl. You're a boy. Are you a boy? You aren't a boy. We're boys. Are we boys? We aren't boys. They're boys. Are they boys? They aren't boys. I'm a buyer. Am I a buyer? I'm not a buyer. He's a buyer. Is he a buyer? He isn't a buyer. She's a buyer. Is she a buyer? She isn't a buyer. You're a buyer. Are you a buyer? You aren't a buyer. We're buyers. Are we buyers? We aren't buyers. They're buyers. Are they buyers? They aren't buyers. I'm a translator. Am I a translator? I'm not a translator. He's a translator. Is he a translator? He isn't a translator. She's a translator. Is she a translator? She isn't a translator. You're a translator. Are you a translator? You aren't a translator. We're translators. Are we translators? We aren't translators. They're translators. Are they translators? They aren't translators. I'm an interpreter. Am I an interpreter? I'm not an interpreter. He's an interpreter. Is he an interpreter? He isn't an interpreter. She's an interpreter. Is she an interpreter? She isn't an interpreter. You're an interpreter. Are you an interpreter? You aren't an interpreter. We're interpreters. Are we interpreters? We aren't interpreters. They're interpreters. Are they interpreters? They aren't. Interpreters. I'm an employer. Am I an employer? I'm not an employer. He's an employer. Is he an employer? He isn't an employer. She's an employer. Is she an employer? She isn't an employer. You're an employer. Are you an employer? You aren't an employer. We're employers. Are we employers? We aren't employers. They're employers. Are they employers? They aren't employers. I'm a traveler. Am I a traveler? I'm not a traveler. He's a traveler. Is he a traveler? He isn't a traveler. She's a traveler. Is she a traveler? She isn't a traveler. You're a traveler. Are you a traveler? You aren't a traveler. We're travelers. Are we travelers? We aren't travelers. They're travelers. Are they travelers? They aren't travelers. I'm a refugee. Am I a refugee? I'm not a refugee. He's a refugee. Is he a refugee? He isn't a refugee. She's a refugee. Is she a refugee? She isn't a refugee. You're a refugee. Are you a refugee? You aren't a refugee. We're refugees. Are we refugees? We aren't refugees. They're refugees. Are they refugees? They aren't refugees. I'm a journalist. Am I a journalist? I'm not a journalist. He's a journalist. Is he a journalist? He isn't a journalist. She's a journalist. Is she a journalist? She isn't a journalist. You're a journalist. Are you a journalist? You aren't a journalist. We're journalists. Are we journalists? We aren't journalists. They're journalists. Are they journalists? They aren't journalists. I'm a tenant. Am I a tenant? I'm not a tenant. He's a tenant. Is he a tenant? He isn't a tenant. She's a tenant. Is she a tenant? She isn't a tenant. You're a tenant. Are you a tenant? You aren't a tenant. We're tenants. Are we tenants? We aren't tenants. They're tenants. Are they tenants? They aren't tenants. I'm a firefighter. Am I a firefighter? I'm not a firefighter. He's a firefighter. Is he a firefighter? He isn't a firefighter. She's a firefighter. Is she a firefighter? She isn't a firefighter. You're a firefighter. Are you a firefighter? You aren't a firefighter. We're firefighters. Are we firefighters? We aren't firefighters. They're firefighters. Are they firefighters? They aren't. Firefighters. I'm a gambler. Am I a gambler? I'm not a gambler. He's a gambler. Is he a gambler? He isn't a gambler. She's a gambler. Is she a gambler? She isn't a gambler. You're a gambler. Are you a gambler? You aren't a gambler. We're gamblers. Are we gamblers? We aren't gamblers. They're gamblers. Are they gamblers? They aren't gamblers. I'm a tutor. Am I a tutor? I'm not a tutor. He's a tutor. Is he a tutor? He isn't a tutor. She's a tutor. Is she a tutor? She isn't a tutor. You're a tutor. Are you a tutor? You aren't a tutor. We're tutors. Are we tutors? We aren't tutors. They're tutors. Are they tutors? They aren't tutors. I'm a coach. Am I a coach? I'm not a coach. He's a coach. Is he a coach? He isn't a coach. She's a coach. Is she a coach? She isn't a coach. You're a coach. Are you a coach? You aren't a coach. We're coaches. Are we coaches? We aren't coaches. They're coaches. Are they coaches? They aren't coaches. I'm a director. Am I a director? I'm not a director. He's a director. Is he a director? He isn't a director. She's a director. Is she a director? She isn't a director. You're a director. Are you a director? You aren't a director. We're directors. Are we directors? We aren't directors. They're directors. Are they directors? They aren't directors. I'm a builder. Am I a builder? I'm not a builder. He's a builder. Is he a builder? He isn't a builder. She's a builder. Is she a builder? She isn't a builder. You're a builder. Are you a builder? You aren't a builder. We're builders. Are we builders? We aren't builders. They're builders. Are they builders? They aren't builders. I'm a scientist. Am I a scientist? I'm not a scientist. He's a scientist. Is he a scientist? He isn't a scientist. She's a scientist. Is she a scientist? She isn't a scientist. You're a scientist. Are you a scientist? You aren't a scientist. We're scientists. Are we scientists? We aren't scientists. They're scientists. Are they scientists? They aren't scientists. I'm a student. Am I a student? I'm not a student. He's a student. Is he a student? He isn't a student. She's a student. Is she a student? She isn't a student. You're a student. Are you a student? You aren't a student. We're students. Are we students? We aren't students. They're students. Are they students? They aren't students. I'm a guest. Am I a guest? I'm not a guest. He's a guest. Is he a guest? He isn't a guest. She's a guest. Is she a guest? She isn't a guest. You're a guest. Are you a guest? You aren't a guest. We're guests. Are we guests? We aren't guests. They're guests. Are they guests? They aren't guests. I'm a pilot. Am I a pilot? I'm not a pilot. He's a pilot. Is he a pilot? He isn't a pilot. She's a pilot. Is she a pilot? She isn't a pilot. You're a pilot. Are you a pilot? You aren't a pilot. We're pilots. Are we pilots? We aren't pilots. They're pilots. Are they pilots? They aren't pilots. I'm a secretary. Am I a secretary? I'm not a secretary. He's a secretary. Is he a secretary? He isn't a secretary. She's a secretary. Is she a secretary? She isn't a secretary. You're a secretary. Are you a secretary? You aren't a secretary. We're secretaries. Are we secretaries? We aren't secretaries. They're secretaries. Are they secretaries? They aren't secretaries. I'm a tailor. Am I a tailor? I'm not a tailor. He's a tailor. Is he a tailor? He isn't a tailor. She's a tailor. Is she a tailor? She isn't a tailor. You're a tailor. Are you a tailor? You aren't a tailor. We're tailors. Are we tailors? We aren't tailors. They're tailors. Are they tailors? They aren't tailors. I'm an engineer. Am I an engineer? I'm not an engineer. He's an engineer. Is he an engineer? He isn't an engineer. She's an engineer. Is she an engineer? She isn't an engineer. You're an engineer. Are you an engineer? You aren't an engineer. We're engineers. Are we engineers? We aren't engineers. They're engineers. Are they engineers? They aren't engineers. I'm an operator. Am I an operator? I'm not an operator. He's an operator. Is he an operator? He isn't an operator. She's an operator. Is she an operator? She isn't an operator. You're an operator. Are you an operator? You aren't an operator. We're operators. Are we operators? We aren't operators. They're operators. Are they operators? They aren't operators. I'm an uncle. Am I an uncle? I'm not an uncle. He's an uncle. Is he an uncle? He isn't an uncle. She's an aunt. Is she an aunt? She isn't an aunt. You're an uncle. Are you an uncle? You aren't an uncle. We're uncles. Are we uncles? We aren't uncles. They're uncles. Are they uncles? They aren't uncles. I'm a grandfather. Am I a grandfather? I'm not a grandfather. He's a grandfather. Is he a grandfather? He isn't a grandfather. She's a grandmother. Is she a grandmother? She isn't a grandmother. You're a grandmother. Are you a grandmother? You aren't a grandmother. We're grandmothers. Are we grandmothers? We aren't grandmothers. They're grandmothers. Are they grandmothers? They aren't. Grandmothers. I'm a president. Am I a president? I'm not a president. He's a president. Is he a president? He isn't a president. She's a president. Is she a president? She isn't a president. You're a president. Are you a president? You aren't a president. We're presidents. Are we presidents? We aren't presidents. They're presidents. Are they presidents? They aren't presidents. I'm a prime minister. Am I a prime minister? I'm not a prime minister. He's a prime minister. Is he a prime minister? He isn't a prime minister. She's a prime minister. Is she a prime minister? She isn't a prime minister. You're a prime minister. Are you a prime minister? You aren't a prime minister. We're prime ministers. Are we prime ministers? We aren't prime ministers. They're prime ministers. Are they prime ministers? They aren't prime ministers. I'm a neighbor. Am I a neighbor? I'm not a neighbor. He's a neighbor. Is he a neighbor? He isn't a neighbor. She's a neighbor. Is she a neighbor? She isn't a neighbor. You're a neighbor. Are you a neighbor? You aren't a neighbor. We're neighbors. Are we neighbors? We aren't neighbors. They're neighbors. Are they neighbors? They aren't neighbors. I'm an angel. Am I an angel? I'm not an angel. He's an angel. Is he an angel? He isn't an angel. She's an angel. Is she an angel? She isn't an angel. You're an angel. Are you an angel? You aren't an angel. We're angels. Are we angels? We aren't angels. They're angels. Are they angels? They aren't angels. I'm a lion. Am I a lion? I'm not a lion. He's a lion. Is he a lion? He isn't a lion. She's a lion. Is she a lion? She isn't a lion. You're a lion. Are you a lion? You aren't a lion. We're lions. Are we lions? We aren't lions. They're lions. Are they lions? They aren't lions. I'm a liar. Am I a liar? I'm not a liar. He's a liar. Is he a liar? He isn't a liar. She's a liar. Is she a liar? She isn't a liar. You're a liar. Are you a liar? You aren't a liar. We're liars. Are we liars? We aren't liars. They're liars. Are they liars? They aren't liars.